The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you by our proud sponsors, Rams On Demand, SeatGiant, Throwback Joe, and now our new sponsor, Kayvon Webster's new LA food truck, VYBE 305, from South Beach to Sunset. Hashtag catch a vibe. For more information, check out VYBE305.com today. Now enjoy the show.
35-30, Robert Woods, first down 20, 10-5, touchdown, LA! No, it's Goff who keeps it, and Goff goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there and comes away with his third sack of the afternoon. Met immediately and sacked. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. Todd Gurley, 20, 10, Gurley for MVP, touchdown LA! And he gets gobbled up. Savage has to eat it as Michael Brockers picks up the sack.
It's Pitts! Nickel Roby Coleman!
He's decked by Eden Collins.
Touchdown! Brandon Cooks! Incredible!
For the first time since 2003, the Rams are NFC West champions.
Welcome back, guys, to episode 115 of the Downtown Rams podcast. I'm your host, Jake Ellenbogen, here, joined by Joe Curley, and we got a lot to talk about. Aaron Donald, we got practice squads, we got 53-man rosters, we got RG3, all the whole nine. So, Joe, how is it though? Because we haven't talked in a little bit. How's everything going?
It's been busy. There's a lot going on, but all good. I'm glad we could finally reconnect here between cuts and practice squad and fantasy football drafts. There's just a lot going on Labor Day weekend, and I just got off a little kids party, so
Nice.
I'm ready to talk football. I took a little break, cleared my mind a little bit after the practice squad was announced, and I'm ready to go through this.
All right, man. Well, let's do it. It's actually episode 116. Totally failed. Just realized. So, Aaron Donald has, it lasted one day, Joe. He was the highest paid defensive player in NFL history for one day. And if you want to go by the 24-hour rule, I don't even know if it was an entire day, but whatever. The Rams end up signing him to a 6-year deal. Definitely north of the numbers that I was originally given for the guaranteed money. They were definitely south of the numbers I was given for the annual money. Overall, Joe, what are your thoughts on this deal?
I think it lined up perfectly with what we thought. I think it's funny how when it comes down, it's all so obvious. I had been, on a bunch of different, shows and podcasts and stuff. And when people had asked me about Donald, my one takeaway going into it was that, this was not a guy who was, they weren't going to start that season on Monday night without him reporting. I thought that even though, I thought he was going to report one way or another. He was asked that question the other day and he declined to answer it. But, I really was not worried about him. One, it not getting done, and two, him not showing up for the season. So I think that's all that really matters from a Rams perspective. And then, good for him to get his money to put his, put his family in the optimum position and really, may we all be the highest paid member of our profession for one day. I think I'm not really going to worry about Aaron Donald losing his record after one day. It's all about attaining that record. That was the point. We knew that whoever was going to get paid first was going to own the record for a moment, and then whoever was going to, with Mack getting paid second, that's who was going to keep it. And I think Aaron and his $135 million. He's going to be happy with that. So I think everyone kind of comes out happy. Aaron's gotten paid. The Rams have the best defensive player in the league. Rams fans can begin to focus on this incredible run, and Rams reporters can move beyond asking poor Sean McVay about Aaron Donald's contract day after day after day, meaninglessly.
Ugh, I know. And now I don't have to see the hashtag paid the man anymore.
That's right. The man got paid.
Yeah. Just got paid the man. I'm
full.
fine with those. I was just getting tired of pay the man because, I mean, and you guys will
although it was a dope sign. We have to shout out to all the fans that brought those to training camp and stuff. I think it was a great sign. We were just it was time to move, time to pay him and move on and talk football.
Yeah. And that great sign, actually, the one that made it kind of viral, had pictures of it all over, was none other than Nick Gallaretta, our very own Nick.
The man.
Yeah, he with Downtown Rams. Of course, I did not know him at that time. But, slowly but surely, he's become a good friend of mine. And he's a big guy in this Rams community, let me tell you.
Yeah, I've met him myself. Where were we? Maybe San Francisco or wherever he came last year to one of the road games or 2 years ago. And, I definitely met him. And I definitely saw that sign in all its glory at training camp.
And Robert Quinn signing it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
No, I mean, he's like that one guy. Like, if you think I'm crazy, like, he can literally tell you what happened when the Rams had like a 3rd and 14, week 14 of the 2005 season, and who was under center and who was the running back who came in on 3rd down and the left. Like, I mean, he is such a Rams fan. He knows all of that. So if anyone were to call him a bandwagon, they'd be out of their mind. But
so he's the Sean McVay of Rams fans. Is that what you're saying? He's got total recall.
Yeah. Pretty much, yeah. I would say he's very mindful. Sean, I think Sean said that more times than I can count. If you listen, you'll pick it up, Joe.
Yeah.
Next to next interview, he'll just say you have to be mindful.
He's got some Seanisms. We've all got our things. I'm sure people who listen to your podcast understand that I say the word obviously way too much. And sorry if you're hearing got a little power drill situation going on next door. So let me know if you can hear it. I'll try to go inside. I'm sitting in my backyard and people are working hard, even though it's Labor Day weekend. They're working on their homes around here.
How about that? No, I can't hear a thing. But I'm sure there's Jake-isms out there as well. As long as I don't become a Ricky-ism, I'm good. Like,
that's right.
For those of you who've ever seen Trailer Park Boys. But getting a little off topic here, so we'll just go right on to the scheduled program. Roster cuts, okay. I was not shocked by the majority of them, but there were some cuts that I was kind of against, and there were some roster keeps that I was kind of like, I don't know. One of them, obviously, I'm going to bring up is Tigre Scales, although in my post-game show of that dreadful preseason game that I really just don't know how I was able to compose myself and put together a post-game for. Yeah, I definitely said that Tigre Scales was likely not going to make the roster. And the thing that irks me is that I feel like he is definitely skilled enough to do so. I just could see where the writing was on the wall. He wasn't playing. It was, Traven Howard was playing ahead of him. So I felt as though Traven Howard had jumped him on the depth chart. And then, little do I know that they don't end up even keeping Traven Howard. So that was a little surprising. Although he was waived injured, so I think he's going to revert back to injured reserve. I just checked the Rams depth chart, and he's not on injured reserve yet, so a little annoyed by that. But, all in all, most of them made a lot of sense. Guys like, I know people were upset about JoJo Natson getting cut, but, they already have Farrell Cooper. JoJo Natson is just like my guy Shakir Ryan was last year. Productive, return guy in preseason. He just
he led the NFL in preseason in returns. So he just picked a rough team to be with. That's somebody who maybe if you ever had an injury to Cooper, they could bring him in real quick and plug him right in.
Absolutely, And I think one thing I really liked about this preseason, I think you saw Pharoh Cooper show his ability as a receiver. Because obviously we know he's an all-pro return guy, but I thought he was impressive. Just going back and watching the film, I think he's really improved his route running. And I almost, in a way, I kind of find that as disrespect to him because he was always a solid route runner. I just think, he kind of is one of the guys, like, if you don't see him, in the offense, anything he does now is going to be a shock to us. He's fully capable. I shouldn't be like that because the Rams have their big three receivers that are just really good. And Pharoh's probably the fourth guy, so you don't really see him as much. But I saw, some impressive growth there from Pharoh Cooper. So I was definitely impressed with that.
Well, I see Pharoh kind of picking up that Tavon Austin role. I think you're going to see some jet sweeps and some fake jet handoff and stuff like that. I think he's just, when those plays get called, he's going to be the one running those actions. I think that's a pretty easy fix. Those will be his snaps this year.
The thing with Pharoh, I like, he's kind of filled out enough to be like a running back in some cases. So I wonder if they'll line him up as like a Chris Thompson, where kind of leaks out to the sideline and throw a screen his way or something like that. I definitely think he kind of reminds me of Stedman Bailey, honestly, but he's like a bigger guy, like he's more filled out. As I said, I don't know. I'm really looking forward to his growth because I think he's more than just some guy. He's not just a returner. I think he, displayed he has offensive qualities, and I think the Rams are going to use him more. As far as like defense, we talked about it before we went on the air, and Ewan Price is somebody I thought you saw a tremendous amount of growth from this preseason. As you mentioned, he's just not big enough.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was kind of slow to adapt his first year, and I think that kind of slowed him down. But, certainly he showed, some improvement, and I think that's why he played pretty well. I mean, I think, I just think, this team, one thing I think that, when the cuts came for a team that had, 10, 11 draft picks, the first year, it really put the UDFAs in a bind. It put a lot of the former practice squad players in a bind. You're just going to be in it when you have that many draft picks. No matter where in the draft they're drafted, it becomes a heck of a lot harder to make the team. I mean, I don't know I think my big surprise with who didn't make it was Stephen Parker. I thought he was probably, of all the UDFAs, that he probably played the best and probably deserved to make the roster. I think. Are you picking?
Oh my god!
An ESPN guy, huh? So I think out of all that, so I think it's a big deal that they kept him. He didn't get claimed, and they kept him on the practice squad because I think he's somebody who potentially has a future on this team. I think out of all the UDFAs, he was the most impressive. I think he was, and I think that all in all, I think you're keeping, the Rams are keeping a lot of these draft picks. One, because it's their first year, but I think all of them have shown promise. I think they've done an excellent job. I said this on, I think, SiriusXM the other day. My other big opinion out of this, this week for the Rams is that, when you're signing, you're getting all this business done. Kudos to the Rams for signing, Cooks and Curley and Donald and Havenstein and getting all that business done. Now, they're headed toward a top-heavy roster where they're going to have, 6 to 9 guys paid, and the rest of the roster is going to have to be kind of minimum, cheap guys, value guys. And I think it's going to be really important for them, to hit on draft picks in the mid to the late rounds. And that's what it looks like they've done with a lot of these draft picks. this year. So, and I think certainly they had quality guys at the UDFAs that maybe didn't make the team and didn't stick. But I do think that the 9 that they've announced for the practice squad, the back end of that roster, I think they have the requisite value to kind of make that, this whole financial system, stars and scrubs, speaking of fantasy sports, making that thing kind of stand up from a, in reality. And so that's looking forward to seeing, how they maintain, this cap structure going forward, having paid, 6 to 9 guys at the high end, and getting a lot of value guys at the back end.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there, and you've mentioned stars and scrubs a lot. That is going to be your Joeism. Curley.
Well, it's kind of I feel bad because, I'm not calling the back end of the roster scrubs, but it's for those of you that don't know, it's really more of it's a term in fantasy baseball that they use, or in auction leagues in general, to, go out and spend a lot of money on a lot of guys on, the big, getting multiple elite players. And then, you're stuck with, a bunch of dollar players at the end of the roster, those of you that play, auction leagues. And, I think that's one way to do it. And it certainly looks like the Rams are doing kind of that in reality.
Going once, going twice, sold.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah, somebody who's done it.
I couldn't do the auction league after that. I was like, I just did not have fun my first time listening to that guy. Like,
you got to turn it off. You got to turn the thing off. Yeah.
Well, I turned off the sound of this draft because, one, I forgot we were drafting the Downtown Rams League, which I think it was Skylar that put together. No, it was Joe Isola. So, yeah, that whole thing. Sorry about that noise, by the way. You shouldn't have to feel bad about the stars and scrubs because I had a giant ESPN noise. But
it was dope. Good job.
How loud was it? Was it triumphant? Like, did it sound like this big?
It sound. Yeah, you blasted it. That was dope.
It's coming You're gonna have to speakers for some reason.
Is it gonna? Are you gonna edit it out? Or are you gonna leave that? Is everybody gonna enjoy that? I think it works because that's what everybody's doing this weekend. This is, to me, not to hijack this podcast and fantasy football, but I can't do these leagues where you're drafting like in the middle of August and so much happens, and just think of all the stuff that's happened this weekend. I think you really need, to draft Labor Day weekend, Labor Day if possible, and then I actually have a league that's going to draft Wednesday night, the night before the season starts.
Wow. Yeah, no, I
total. You need perfect information, my man. You need perfect information.
Well, we just did a Dynasty IDP league, and Joe had no idea
we're gonna keep going, huh?
Who to draft with the IDP.
Yeah, I'd say, okay, fine, I'll play fantasy football with you, Jake. We'll see, what kind of league is this? Normal? And I go in, and it's 40 rounds, including almost a full defense. And I'm like, oh my God, what are we doing here? But now I'm all excited. I don't know if I'm going to be able to not, be able to play without IDP for the rest of my fantasy sports career. You've introduced me to a whole new world, and I don't know if I can go back.
I love it because I totally was throwing something at the wall and hoping it stuck. But yeah. And those of you who are already fans of Joe Curley, now here's the thing: Micah Kaiser's huge. He has a huge following in this Rams community. So you'll be happy to know that it was not I; it was Joe Curley who actually rostered Micah Kaiser in our deep IDP PPR Dynasty League. So you want to go and shout him out. There you go.
Well, you'll know. Well, John Kelly was the guy I predicted. That John Kelly was my guy on the offensive side of the ball for the Rams for the draft. And the more I've learned about Micah Kaiser, I think I said back in OTAs that this was going to be the guy that eventually took over in that Mike position. He's got everything they need. I'm not saying he's going to be an all-pro middle linebacker, but he's the perfect kind of role player for that, two down linebacking role. He's smart, he's big, he's tough, he's strong. And did I say he's smart? He's one of the smartest players in college football last year at Virginia. And, I think eventually by the middle of this year or next year, I think you're going to be in a position where I think they could move, if they ever move on from Barron, they could move Littleton over to the Mo and move Kaiser into that Mike. And I think eventually that's probably what you're going to see, in the middle of that defense sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I definitely could see that. I'm hoping Tigre has a spot, in the future, but it sounds like, the way it looks is Ramik Wilson is highly regarded in that room, and I would not be surprised if they extended him. Bryce Hager as well, and the reason I say that is because I know, and I also want to bring this up, Joe, because I saw a lot of people were saying, why keep Mike Thomas? Special teams doesn't matter. I could play special teams. You could play. I don't like that because this is the best special teams coach in the league on this team in Coach Bones. They've had the best special teams. Special teams won them a game against the number one defense and a team that went to the AFC title game in Jacksonville. So to say that it doesn't matter is a joke. That's the joke. But I'll tell you right now, I think the way Hager's played on special teams, I think that is what keeps him on this roster. Yes, he's made strides as being an actual defensive player. Him and Ramik actually made a couple huge plays in preseason. I just think people are way too quick to discount special teams, and I'll tell you right now, the Rams don't, because if they did, Kadarius Hodge would have made it, and Mike Thomas would not have. So I think special teams are bigger than people give it credit for. As far as if we were doing a stock game, Joe, I'd have stock up special teams, stock down fan approval of special teams. But I mean,
yeah, I think anybody that's going to discount special teams obviously hasn't been watching this team. Rams fans shouldn't be reminded that this team was the number 10th team in total offense last year, but they were number one scoring team in the league, and that had a lot to do with special teams. That had a lot to do with the kickers. It had a lot to do with Corey Littleton and some of the blocks and some of the play, and obviously Farrell Cooper. This team, legitimately is a three-sided football team, a three-phase team, and that's why they're one of the best teams in the NFL. So, I think there's other reasons. You can get into that position. Certainly, Mike Thomas is a stalwart on this team because of what he does on special teams. It's also another reason why Troy Hill sticks around. It's another reason why the guys like Isaiah Johnson and some of the other guys in that secondary are hanging around because of their work on special teams. And there has been, not to hijack this thing, but there has been a lot of turnover when you've got guys like Ebukam and Littleton who are stepping into the starting lineup, maybe can't be on so many special teams. And, they got to rely on the back end of some of that roster last year to keep continuity in some of those special teams. So it is important to hang on to guys like Mike Thomas. And so anyway, that's just my opinion on that.
No, I absolutely hear you there. I do want to point out that I was wrong about, I think we touched on this, I want to say about a month ago, and I said, buy or sell basically, Johnny Munt is playing against Justin Davis. And I totally expected Johnny Munt to get cut originally after Justin Davis played his first preseason game. When Justin Davis started to miss games, I felt like he was gone. And I felt like Johnny Munt was going to get a roster spot. Instead, they both get rostered. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Munt, from all reports, Munt outplayed Tamarick. I think we both can admit that you and I are Tamarick Hemingway fans, and I think it's not the last that we've heard of Tamarick Hemingway. So I think he does have a lot of what the Rams are looking for in that third tight end. I don't know if Munt is big enough as a blocker. He certainly is more of an offensive player, more of a receiver. So that'll be interesting. Maybe honestly, I don't know. Why that decision was made. And then in terms of Justin Davis, that was probably a surprise. The fact that they kept 4 backs, and he was one of them. And I think it's probably he must be doing some good things on special teams, because certainly, when you look at it, when all is said and done, this backfield has significantly improved because of Kelly, and I don't know if they need to use a 4 spot. I'm sure when you get down to the end of those rooms, when you're talking about Munt, when you're talking about Davis, when you're talking about the last defensive back, when you're talking about I think a lot of those decisions are being made by Bones. I think that's where Bones is giving us a little list to coach and saying, well, these are the guys that, if possible, always the 52nd and 53rd men are always special teams picks. I mean, how many times do we have to, have we seen that in years past? When Bradley Marquez always seemed like the 52nd guy or whatever. So anyway, I think that's the way I look at it is when you're talking about the guys at the bottom end of the roster, I'm sure Bones has something to do with those picks.
Yeah, no, I would not be surprised at all. I think he's very well regarded in that room, and I know everyone was hoping when McVay took over that he would keep him, and he did. And there were not a lot of coaches that were kept. It was really just him and not Rodney P, the gold quarterback,
yes.
But Skip Pete, the running back coach. So I think if there's another one, I'm not recalling it, but I think those were the only 2 coaches that were kept. But finishing up this 53-man roster, that we didn't cover it all together. I just felt like overall the way they kept 3 quarterbacks kind of pissed me off. Like I get it, but you're a Super Bowl caliber team, and when you have all that talent and you have to make those tough decisions, Brandon Allen's not ready to be the backup. I think they should have just rolled with Sean Mannion, and maybe had Brandon Allen on the practice squad or something. I wasn't a fan of keeping 3 quarterbacks. I wasn't a fan of keeping Tanzel Smart. I wasn't a huge fan of keeping Isaiah Johnson. I felt like there were better players that they let go, and I thought they should have kept Aaron Neary, a guy that I thought was had no chance of making the roster coming in. He kind of got clumped into that, crap role, where he was blocking with, the likes of Cornelius Lucas and Darrell Williams. But let me tell you, Aaron Neary started playing really well towards the end of preseason. I thought he put on some good film, and that's ultimately why no one gets claimed from the Rams cut list except for him by the Browns. I thought that was something big.
Yeah, and who knows, obviously the Browns have the number 1 claim, so, that's obviously somebody who was in demand. And, Neary, so the thing about the problem with Neary was that, and, you bring up a good call that he got clumped in with those vets who were getting their butts kicked, in the first and second quarters. One of the reasons why I think Sean Mannion had such a poor preseason, but, when you look at the offensive line, there's only 8 or 9 spots for offensive linemen. You've got your 5 starters, you've got your swingman, and then you've got the 3 guys they drafted. And so, those are the guys who made the team, and really everyone else was kind of locked out. They, a lot of those vets that they moved on from, like Lucas, like Williams, had their chance in Week 17 last year and did not perform well enough in the preseason this year. And so they got moved on, and I think it's probably a good call that Neary got swept up in that. And it's a good eye by you to admit that he played well enough and certainly was in demand when he got cut. Going back to Brandon Allen, I wonder if I always thought Brandon Allen was maybe a Greg Olsen guy. They both came over from Jacksonville together.
Yeah,
I was wondering
I do too.
if this was the end of of his time with the Rams because Olsen had moved on. Obviously not. He played pretty well in the preseason, but I think again, you are using a roster spot on that. I don't think it would have been any problem to cut him and get him on the practice squad. So, and then then he's there and you're hanging around. I don't really think anybody in this league would have reached out and used the spot, used a waiver claim on Brandon Allen. And I do think, if Jared Goff goes down, they are going to turn to Sean Mannion. I expect him to play better than anybody saw this year in preseason, simply because he'd be playing, behind the starting offensive line with the starting receivers. And but that's my expectation. But certainly one other explanation for why they kept Brandon Allen is because Sean Mannion had such a poor preseason. Maybe they feel like they need some insurance there. They need another guy. And I think this is maybe the one criticism. One of the, there's really, you can only really nitpick, the Sean McVay era. There's really not a lot that you can criticize. Obviously it's been an incredible, 18 months he's been in charge. But I think I keep waiting for them to bring in, a quarterback that they can really develop and do something with and have, they haven't really done anything to upgrade the quarterback room since he's been here. I wondered if they would draft someone. I wondered if they would bring someone in off the waiver wire. And it's kind of interesting that they obviously are committed to Goff and Mannion in his last year. So you're in a position where after this season, Jared Goff might be your only quarterback going into a draft year where it's reportedly a down draft year, right? For quarterbacks. So I don't know. It's kind of interesting. That to me is one of the things, low key, I'm kind of interested in to see what happens kind of midterm, long term, the quarterback position beyond Jared Goff, because it's my opinion that when you've got somebody like Sean McVay, you get him, a couple of young quarterbacks to work with. You could be turning over that third quarterback role and trading somebody who's worked with Sean McVay should be worth something big time in the open market. You could be turning that position into, a second or an extra first or second round pick every couple of years. So
you definitely could. I think the Patriots were on to something. Now, I don't know what they were doing trading both Brissett and Garoppolo, because I guess you could have and then taking Kyle Lauletta, but Danny Etling, all he can do is run apparently. So,
well, Lauletta beat out Davis Webb. So your boy Lauletta proved, he could do it, because they wasted a third round pick on him last year. He may be Davis Webb may be the biggest name out there right now, free agent, as a young quarterback, because he got ejected from the Jets because Lauletta beat him out.
Yeah, here's the thing. I know a lot of people like the idea of Davis Webb, placing him on that practice squad and whatnot, and I'm not even against that, but I'd rather. I just don't really see it with him. I don't really. I look at, somebody like Paxton Lynch, the raw talent's there, and what you'll see, basically, I didn't even really mention it earlier, but what you'll see with, Benjamin Allbright, who is coming up later in this podcast, or pretty quickly in this podcast, he's, as he mentioned with, on that front with Paxton Lynch, is that, look, this guy has talent. He needs to go to an offense that is creative. Unfortunately, somebody that's more traditional in Musgrave, his offense doesn't really help at all for what Paxton Lynch is. You could run some sort of RPO type of, very, read option friendly offense for a Paxton Lynch. I think Sean McVay could get the most out of him. Now, I'm not saying he would start. I'm not even close to saying that. I'm saying, next year in preseason, or like this guy could be a long-term developmental guy behind Goff. Now, it sounds funny, but sometimes these big arms, these huge talents, sometimes it takes them some time to actually, succeed. A name that comes to mind is Matt Schaub. I'm not saying he was a, crazy talent, but he's somebody that took a while, a long time to succeed. But when he did, he was one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league for the Texans. He put out some good football. He was really good for them. There are guys like that, the late bloomers of the league, and I think we're so quickly to judge a guy, who's a first-round pick that didn't pan out. Let's keep in mind, this guy played at Memphis for, 1 year? He's got those crazy measurables, but sometimes most of the time measurables don't mean anything. He's a raw quarterback that I think, I'm not putting anything past this coaching staff. So, I think he could definitely come in, compete, and then, maybe you stash him if you're going to keep 3. Maybe you replace Brandon Allen with him. And then, you look at the idea of, Mannion's the backup now, but then maybe next year you like what you see out of Lynch, and Lynch ends up being your backup for the long term. And then maybe, he finds his niche there and, ends up being, the starter if some crazy thing happens with Goff and contract issues or anything like that. So, that's why I like developmental guys like that. As far as Davis Webb, I just see somebody that has a big arm. I don't really see, anything. I don't see a ton there. I just think more so he was drafted off of the name recognition from being the MVP at the Senior Bowl that season and being Jared Goff's, the heir to Jared Goff's throne there. So that's really what I see. I could be wrong, but, I think Paxton Lynch is a legitimate option, and I think the Rams should consider
it. Well, the thing I don't like about Paxton Lynch is he comes out of kind of a simple college offense and hasn't really shown aptitude for the pro game yet. But I think that, you could make those arguments about Jared Goff and maybe he's, a lump of clay that, like we're talking about, that Sean McVay could kind of breathe life into. And, I wonder if Davis, is Davis Webb if I could ask Sean McVay, who's got more potential to be a pro quarterback, would you pick Webb? I almost call him Davis Love. What's wrong with me? Webb or Paxton Lynch,
Pete,
and
Rodney Pete. So,
well, they're brothers, so that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So I don't know. I think we'll see. Obviously, that again, and you have to keep going back to this when the fans are out there on Twitter, killing Sean Mannion and killing Brandon Allen. You have to say, hey, your boy Sean McVay. These are his guys, and these McVay now owns these guys, and he's kept them here, and they've obviously invested in them, and they believe in them, or they wouldn't be here anymore. And so, we can kind of, say they got to bring in Lynch, or they got to bring in Webb, or they got to do this, they got to do that, all they want. But obviously, Sean McVay feels strongly that, he's going to ride with those 3 guys, and if something, happens to Jared Goff, they're going to feel, they have to be in a position where they're going to feel confident in Sean Mannion. So, this is on them. This is a decision that Coach McVay has made, and this is where they are, and we'll see how it plays out.
We definitely will, and Sean Mannion is going to hit free agency next year, and Brandon Allen, I guess we'll see with him. I know, as I keep saying and you guys don't know because I have not showed, or rather put on the Benjamin Allbright interview. So I keep saying.
Oh, I come first? I'm going to be first?
You come first.
Oh, top billing. I don't know if I deserve that. Everybody at home is nodding their head. Yeah, no, you don't.
Oh my god. This all goes back to the first time I talked with this guy, Joe Curley, and you know, he was like this nice guy that Blaine and I reached out to on Twitter, I believe. Like, hey, would you like to come on the podcast? Yeah, sure. You come on and like a very special guest, Joe Curley, and you're like, well, you know, I'm not a special guest, more like a very guest, like.
Wow, you look at the brain on you. It's a pretty good memory. It's bringing back memories. Wow. The early days.
I might have actually quoted that word for word.
I think you did. I just had a deja vu moment because I think you're right. That sounds like something I would say for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so we're gonna take a quick quote unquote break. Upcoming is my interview with Benjamin Allbright, who talks about basically the Aaron Donald situation. There are some little some nuances in there, some little insight into what was going on in that. He talks about the fact the Rams made a call for RG3. He clears the air on the report with Khalil Mack and some more stuff. So enjoy. This is Benjamin Allbright. I am joined here by Benjamin Allbright. He's been on the podcast before. We touched a little bit on Aaron Donald the last time he was on. It was around week 2 of last season. How's it going, man?
Well, it's good to be back. Hope you're doing well as well.
Well, I appreciate that, man. I thank you for taking the time, and we'll get right into it. Aaron Donald was a huge part of last week, or rather this past week. So you had the numbers, I had numbers, your numbers were more right. I had the idea that it was happening on Friday, but I was just wondering if you could offer some additional insight into how this whole deal ended up going down.
Yeah, they actually had a more or less tentative agreement in place for about 2 weeks. There were still some sticking points in terms of length and then the way the contract was structured, but the numbers, in terms of the money, that was the easiest part. The numbers were pretty, both sides were pretty close from the get-go in terms of what that was going to be. This 6-year structure versus the 4-year structure, and how it's, really a 3-year contract with 3-team options versus a 4-year contract with 2-team options, et cetera, et cetera. Like the way the money flow, was really just like the sticking point for a lot of that stuff. And, they went back and forth until they got everything resolved. From what I understood, that the final agreement was actually reached, earlier this week. It was Monday or Tuesday. And then, they were getting ready to try to set everything up with, press conference and all that kind of stuff. And, of course, it leaked on Friday.
Yeah, that's what I was hearing. I had a feeling it was going to come Friday from what I was hearing. And, I think really what it was is that they wanted to, let preseason game number 4 play out. I know Les Snead was there during the broadcast. It was something along the lines he commented on, it would be fun if I could, break the news that Aaron Donald was signing during the halftime show, or he said something like I won't or something. But no, there was a lot of stuff out there, and I'm glad it's done personally. I'm sure you're glad because everyone was going along saying that a team was going to trade, a franchise, ascending player. And then all of a sudden it actually happened, which brings me to my next point. Jim Trotter recently came out with some story on the fact the Rams are actually players in the Khalil Mack sweepstakes. Now, I've seen your tweets about the whole Khalil Mack thing. I am in full agreement with you, and I think you shared it was a meme from Family Guy. The magic box meme, and what it really comes down to is I think the Raiders made a huge mistake. But how real was the Rams' interest in Khalil Mack?
Well, it depends on how you define the term players. They made a call. There was no formal offer. They were not any one of the people that were. They were not, in the final. Teams vying to trade for him, any of that kind of stuff. So, a lot of those things could be people trying to get tweets and retweets and all that kind of stuff by the way they phrase it. They called, and several teams called, almost half the league. But the idea that the Rams were in a position to be down to the final couple of teams trading for Khalil Mack is not accurate.
Yeah, and I appreciate you clearing that up, because I know there were some outlets out there that were saying that they were like serious, inquirers, and it was kind of all a little funny to me. But they were pretty serious inquirers at one point with Junior Gillette, and that kind of went down the drain. The Rams, being mentioned with Khalil Mack and with Junior Gillette and everything. What is your idea of how serious the Rams are in, I guess, acquiring, a veteran presence or an established player on the edge?
I don't know if it has anything to do with being a veteran. I think that the Rams kind of realize, a lot of teams are kind of realizing that, what the Eagles have done the last couple of years, you just go out and get the players. The money will be there. You don't have to worry about that. Salary cap goes up every year. The cap is malleable. As long as you're a team that has cash on hand, the cap is malleable for you. You can always accelerate things or, do what you have to do to move around the cap. Cap is just the easiest thing in the world to work around. That's not a problem. So the real question is, do you have the cash on hand? So what the Rams are doing is they've noticed that Philadelphia's been able to do it in recent years. New England's kind of done it in recent years, and it's basically you just go out and acquire the talent, whatever it costs. You have a positional allocation number that you're not willing to go above, and you can rob Peter to pay Paul there if you need to get around it. But in the end, you're just trying to see who you can get, and if you think that person is the most talented person, go out there and get them and put all the talent on the field, and then worry about the rest of it later, because that's how you're going to win a Super Bowl.
I totally agree with that, and I think the last time we spoke, I mentioned the idea of the Rams either trading for Shane Ray or Shaquille Barrett. I know you're more you're an NFL insider as it is, but I know you're in tune with what Denver's doing. Is that something the Rams, do you think, could possibly do with the familiarity and the experience with Wade Phillips?
I don't think at this point that's going to happen. I think that if it would have happened, it would have happened already. I think at this point, the Broncos, while they quietly tried to shop Shane Ray, they're at the point now where the roster's pretty set. They're just going to roll with what they've got. If the right offer came in for Ray, they'd move in, but the Rams don't have what they would want to make that move. The Rams aren't willing to spend what it would take to make that move. So, I don't know that he's necessarily what they need, even though there's the familiarity there. Shaq, they're going to try to re-sign him. They're trying to use Chubb, Ray, and Barrett as leverage against Ray and Barrett to be able to retain whomever they can retain, on the roster. Shaq's looking for a big payday. That's kind of his thing. And so, he's going to be coming up on that. Ray, he's just looking to get back to where he was as a former first-round pick. His prospects have kind of, maybe soured a little. Hasn't had the productivity for where he was drafted. So, I think, and then obviously they've got Von Miller, and then they've been drafted Bradley Chubb. So, I don't know that either one of those guys are going to be back. I would say that Shaq's probably more likely. Shane will probably hit the free agent market, but they're trying to use each other as leverage, and I don't think either one is a candidate via trade for the Rams. Maybe via free agency next year.
Yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind, and I'm glad you touched on that, because that's not really something we hear very often, out there. It's just a name gets named, and it seems like normally, if something gets mentioned and you comment on it, you're right on the money with it. So, I always appreciate your insight in that regard. We'll stick with the Broncos here for a sec, and they just recently released Paxton Lynch. Now, hear me out here. I'm not a huge Paxton Lynch fan, but I kind of feel like he at least deserves a second chance. And do you see a opportunity where like the Rams could possibly put him on that practice squad, or maybe even sign him?
Well, he's not practice squad eligible, but he's a guy that I think could, you could look at in terms of, bringing him in and then if you got the space to be a backup in a reclamation project, when he's put in an offense that matches what he can do, he can excel. We saw that in that last preseason game. We saw that he can be that guy. But the problem is you need an offensive coordinator or a head coach with that kind of offensive creativity. They don't really have that in Denver right now. Bill Musgrave is kind of a traditionalist, and he kind of runs a traditional offense. That's how it's going to be. As opposed to the Rams coaching situation where I think Sean McVay would be more apt to just kind of play to his skill set, which is I don't want to say it's totally RPOs, but arc read, one read and run type stuff for him would be ideal for Paxton Lynch, in an offense like that. And I would think that McVay would have the credibility and the desire to do something in that regard that would allow him to flourish. I think a good fit for him would be Dallas behind Dak, but I wouldn't be opposed certainly to see him winding up with the Rams.
Yeah, and obviously they have both Sean Mannion and Brandon Allen. Surprised they kept 3 quarterbacks on the roster. But do you see them, if it's not Lynch, do you see them making a trade or picking up a backup quarterback? They do have an extra practice squad spot available right now. They have Luis Perez, and they have that roster exemption for Aaron Donald. So we've seen moves in the past, but do you see the Rams ultimately doing that?
Well, I was told that they were one of the teams that reached out about RG3, to see if he was available to be a backup. So, with that in mind, then I would suggest, the Broncos also reached out. So, I would suggest that, they're out there looking to improve. They know Mannion isn't it, Allen isn't ready, and Perez is a big time developmental guy. He's a great feel good story, and he's got talent, but he's a developmental guy, a long term developmental guy. So they need to find a guy that if something happens to Goff, he gets dinged up, some guy to come in and capably guide the team, and they don't have that right now.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the issues, and I've never really seen. I don't know about you, but I haven't really seen a team that's gone 11-5 and had that much of a reshuffle. But they've made a lot of moves, and they don't have many weaknesses overall. But backup quarterback definitely seems to be one of the weaknesses, and it's not a weakness until Jared Goff goes down. But you don't know. I mean, it could be week 1, knock on wood, if Jared Goff goes down, and then you're stuck with Sean Mannion.
Right. Yeah. It's never a need until it's a need, and then it becomes a pressing need. So, the last thing you want is Sean Mannion starting football games. He shouldn't be on an NFL roster, to be honest with you. But, the Rams can't afford to go out and spend a lot in terms of cap space. We talked about cap being malleable, and they've managed to, manipulate the cap in order to get that defense the way they want. But it would need to be a cheap backup on a cheap deal. A guy like RG3, you couldn't come out and spend, Nick Foles kind of money at this point.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I thought it was really intriguing that the Rams still have cap space after they basically created $7 million in cap when they restructured Andrew Whitworth and Robert Woods. I don't think all of that went to Aaron Donald's contract this year. I know they moved around some of his numbers for this year, but they still have, I believe, $4 or $5 million from that $7 million that they opened up. So that's what really makes me wonder, if they're going to make a move or not. I remember last year, Louis Trinca-Passat, the defensive tackle, went from making the roster to being practice squatted, then getting cut, and then not coming back. So all in the span of the first 4 days after, the final 53 were announced. So I guess anything can really happen. I don't think we should be too concerned with the idea that this is the final 53 by any means. But, with that being said, Ben, what do you foresee the Rams doing, this year? Because, obviously they added a lot and there's a lot of hype and people make the dream team comparisons. But, with the pressure on, where do you see this team going?
Well, if they could stay healthy, I think they can win the division. I think it's really them or the Niners. Arizona's kind of a train wreck right now, and that Seattle team is on the decline. I don't think that they've got Russ, who's a top 7 quarterback in the league, but beyond that roster is really bad. The defense is in decline, and you've got a safety that wants, your best defensive player wants out. So, I would suggest that anything short of winning the division would be a disappointment, for the Rams. You're going to get a challenge from the Niners. They're a very, very well-coached team, and they're getting better. They're going to play, they were competitive last year. Even though they lost a lot of games, they were competitive in all those games. They were close in all those games. So I think watch out. San Fran's probably closer than people think, even though they maybe didn't go out and load up the same way that the Rams did. They're a very good team, and they've got more talent than people give them credit for. So, I think that the Rams are going to be competitive. Your problem is you're stuck in the NFC where, obviously there's a lot of talented football teams. You got the Vikings out there. You got the Eagles looking to repeat. You've got New Orleans is still a threat. Atlanta is a very good football team. And even the Bears, now that they've added Khalil Mack, their offense is a question mark. That defense is very solid. So, you've got a lot of good teams in the NFC. I think the NFC Championship, anything less than that would be a disappointment personally for Rams fans. But, that isn't to say they couldn't make the Super Bowl. I'm just saying anything less than that would be a disappointment.
Yeah, I definitely hear you there. I have the Rams right now playing the Packers in the NFC title game. I don't have a Super Bowl prediction because I can't make one. It's way too hard.
I have them playing the Falcons, actually, but yeah, I can see.
A rematch. That'd be that would be something. Is that in Atlanta or LA?
Well, I mean, it'd be a coin flip, but I just picked the teams. I didn't pick, where they'd wind up. I just picked the teams. So.
Fair enough. Last question. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I don't want to keep you all day because you're a busy man. But last question. The Rams they take care of Curley, Donald, Havenstein, and Cooks this offseason. Who's next as far as contract extensions concerned?
Depends on Peters. Depends on if he's a fit with the coaching staff and everything else. He would be the next guy. Obviously, Talib's a one-year rental, so Peters would be the next kind of guy that they would look at for that. There's a couple other guys, those young guys that are up for contracts. Whitworth's probably going to be gone. Talib's probably going to be gone next year, so that'll free up a little bit of money. You bring No Boom, over there to fill in for Whitworth, and next man up at the corner position, kind of go from there.
All right. Well, just to double back on that, you said Talib's probably gone. You don't think he comes back another year?
Talib lost a step last year. He's still a good corner, but he's nowhere near the guy he used to be. And with his contract and the money, he would have to come back on like veteran minimum. He's just a one-year rental. I'm pretty sure.
All right. Well, that's cool because I haven't heard that from anybody yet. So yeah, I appreciate your insight, man. Really appreciate it. And let's talk soon.
Absolutely.
All right. Take care, Ben.
You too.
All right, guys. That was Ben Allbright. Hope you guys enjoyed. I definitely had fun interviewing him. I remember the last time. I remember exactly where I was, Joe, when I was interviewing him the last time. It was week 2, and we had not gone to the game yet. My dad was in the other room, and we were at this hotel right across from Knott's Berry Farm. And
nice.
And I was sitting at a table, and we were driving, through, LA and whatnot, and he's like, yeah, I could do the interview in let's say an hour. And so we hustled back to the hotel room, and I did it right on some table in this basic room that had the most annoying acoustics. So
cool.
Yeah, I have some crazy memory, man.
You do. Look at you are Total Recall. You're Sean McVay.
How about that?
That spot on Real Sports.
So we have 3 Sean McVays. So we have Sean McVay, we have Nick Gallaretta, and we have Jake Ellenbogen.
That's right. I'm just going to keep. Oh, and no, there's one more Sean McVay. Who's the defensive Sean McVay? Apparently, I'm just throwing around Sean McVay's like nothing. Maybe I need to chill out with that. But yeah, obviously, your boy Aubrey.
That's
he
boy.
He lit up when I told him I call him the defensive Sean McVay. He lit right up. He was pleased with that.
You made his day.
Yeah. Well, he's coming. He's I believe that. I believe in him. I think people are going to learn. He's going to become a star in this league, doing what he's doing. Just the question is, is he gonna be, Wade Phillips's successor, or is maybe he gonna move on to, a head coach earlier than later? Well, we'll see. Or if he's gonna stick around in LA, who knows?
Yeah, I think anything's really possible. I think eventually he'll get a coaching job, and I think you're on to something with him. And that's why I name dropped you in our interview, the interview I had with Jim Everett. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, good job with all that. It's a big get. Gotta love Jim. And, I think the stuff, I've said it repeatedly on this, but the stuff that you're doing with Throwback Thursday is really, a special part of all the media that all the Rams-centric media that's out there. It certainly has a place at the table of one of the more unique things, and something that every Rams fan has got to, pay attention to, on a bi-weekly basis, we'll say, on an almost weekly basis, on a monthly basis now.
I would say
we're going to get...
you know what? Yeah, I'll leave it at just stay tuned.
It happens when it happens.
It happens when it happens.
That's a good call. Yeah, it's got to be organic. You can't be out there beating the bushes, begging, alums to take part. It's when you run into them, when they're available, when it happens, when they're ready to tell their story. I think that's important. So keep up the good work and enjoy your Labor Day, because you certainly have deserve a break, deserve a rest, and we're here, man. It's going to be game week in 48 hours.
Yeah. Oh man, that came pretty fast, but yeah, no, you're not kidding. Football is like right around the corner, and I'm really looking forward to it. Do the Rams really have to play on Monday night at 10:30 p.m.? I mean, come on. It's not 10:30 for you, but it's 10:30 for me. Like, that really had to happen.
Well, the problem is that when they play like they did 2 years ago, you're going to love to be up. They're going to keep you up. If they're doing that to if they're doing to the Raiders what the Niners did to them that night 2 years ago. So I think it's going to be a long wait. They're going to be the last team to open their season, but I get the feeling when you consider where the Rams are right now, you consider where the Raiders are at the moment. That's going to be. You have to look forward as a Rams fan to, opening the season with a potential flexing of the muscles in Oakland. Well, here, let me hijack this before we get off. Obviously, we're on the cusp of leaving here. Are you going to make a prediction? Do you make a prediction? Are you going to? Let's set the expectations for this team, or are we going to do Are you going to do something else next week? Are we going to do like a season preview next week?
We can do a season preview next week, but why don't we just throw it out right now?
Well, if we're going to do a season preview, maybe we hold it for next week. Let's do that. Let's do an entire season, Downtown Rams season preview, kind of in the middle, right? We're going to do a podcast before.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm working on 4 a week. I think this is 5, honestly.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, so let's hold next week. We will give our predictions, expectations. It's something that I like to do, because no one cares what I predict. Everyone's predictions are, they're just an opinion. It's meaningless. But I think as a media member, one thing that we do is we set expectations. We talk to fans. We, try to mirror what they, the overall, overarching, what they're doing, what they think going into a season, what's going to keep them happy. And I think that's really what we got to talk about next week, going into, after all the hype, everything that's going on in the off season, what is the real expectations for this? What is a legitimate success for this team? And what does it mean going forward? I think that's something that we have to, address, next week. Once we see once the 53 is set, once the schedule is set, once we see the whole league, and we can start to figure out, where this team is going and what's a legitimate expectation for 2018.
Hey, I hear you, man. And by the way, that sounds like a lot of fan mail you keep shredding. Is that hate mail?
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm in my backyard, and that was me raking the pine needles here.
No, I'm totally
Just
messing with you.
Apologies if it's loud. I thought if you couldn't hear the drilling, you weren't going to hear the raking. But I guess the raking is louder than the drilling. Excuse me.
At first, I thought it was your kid playing with a toy car, and I was like,
oh,
I was like, no, it's definitely Joe, like ripping up all the hate mail.
Yeah, no, that's just me raking. We worked in the backyard today, and had to put in some time around the house. It is Labor Day weekend, going into football season. I'm not around on the weekends very often, so this is one of the few days all fall where I'll be home. So gotta put the time in when there's time.
I hear you, man. All right, well, it sounds like this is going to wrap up another Downtown Rams podcast. It was episode 116. If you're listening and you skipped around, yes, I did say 115 at the beginning because I'm a moron, but it is 116. I am signing off, and it's been fun. Joe Curley has been here, and I interviewed Ben Allbright as well, so pretty awesome episode to follow up. A little quiet. I guess there were some people that weren't so happy that I took a little break and did the podcast on a Sunday instead of right after Donald signed. And I guess it was a lot less like me, but here we are, podcast up. Tomorrow we're actually going to have Mikal Bridges, small forward of the Phoenix Suns, who's a huge Rams fan. He's coming on the show, so we are pretty excited for that. Blaine Griesak's going to join me. He's a huge Villanova fan, and I'm a Kansas fan, so this is really sacrilegious to Kansas fans everywhere. I hope Rock Chalk Talk doesn't kick me off the site for writing that, but no, I'm looking forward to that. Hope you guys tune in, and take care. Hey, here's to you, California.